a decorated field marshal, a sealed briefcase, two generals on his doorstep. On October 14, 1944, Erwin Rommel, Hitler's most famous general, was given a choice: face a show trial that would destroy his family, or swallow a smooth glass ampule and die within minutes. He chose the cyanide. Why did one of Germany's most brilliant commanders end his life like this? To understand Rommel's choice, we have to follow the arc of his reputation, his disillusionment, the July 20th plot against Hitler, and the regime's need for a scapegoat. This is not a simple story of heroes and villains. It is a story about loyalty under a dictatorship, about the limits of dissent, and about a man trapped by his own fame. Erwin Rommel was born in 1891 in southern Germany. He grew up fascinated by engineering, flight, and movement, how things work and how to make them move faster. As a young officer in World War I, he showed nerve and initiative, leading from the front, using speed and surprise to break stalemates. His small unit tactics became legendary, and he wrote about them in a book that stressed momentum, deception, and moral force. From the start, Rommel believed in motion, shock, and control of tempo. He was not a political theorist. He was a tactician, keen-eyed, pragmatic, and ambitious. When World War II began, Rommel was recognized as a skilled field commander. In 1940, during the campaign in France, he led the 7th Panzer Division so aggressively that it earned the nickname Ghost Division, appearing where the enemy did not expect it. He took those lessons of speed, surprise, and combined arms and carried them to North Africa in 1941, where he took command of the Africa Corps. North Africa made his legend. The desert suited Rommel's style: long horizons, open maneuver, and the need to juggle fuel, engineering, and reconnaissance. He built a reputation for striking hard and then vanishing, for feints that felt like slaps, for attacks that became puzzles the British struggled to solve. Even his enemies respected him. British newspapers called him the Desert Fox. But for all the flair, Rommel's theater bled logistics. Fuel shortages strangled his ambitions. Supply ships were sunk. Distances were colossal. He won battles but could not beat the arithmetic of the sea. At El Alamein in late 1942, pressure from a better supplied British Eighth Army under Bernard Montgomery, coupled with Allied control of the Mediterranean lanes, forced Rommel back. He fought delaying actions into Tunisia, and by May 1943, Axis forces in North Africa surrendered. The fame that Rommel earned in the desert followed him home, and with it came expectations. Hitler promoted him and in late 1943 placed him in charge of strengthening Germany's western defenses, the Atlantic Wall. Rommel toured the coast from the Netherlands to Normandy, ordering beach obstacles, minefields, and forward defenses. He wanted to push the battle onto the shoreline, to crush the invasion before it could spread inland. He also pleaded for more mobile reserves under his control. Rommel saw the storm coming and knew time was running out. He pressed, sometimes bluntly, against sluggish bureaucracy and rosy illusions in Berlin. Germany's air power was fading. Allied air supremacy made daytime movement risky. The Wehrmacht was exhausted by the Eastern Front. Rommel argued that only a brutal, immediate response could stop an invasion. He was right about the threat, but he was serving a regime that no longer listened to hard truths. June 6, 1944. D-Day. The Allies burst onto the beaches. Despite fierce German resistance in some sectors, the beachhead survived. Allied airborne troops sowed chaos inland. Naval gunfire devastated fixed positions, and the weather window favored the attackers. Rommel was away the morning of the landings, visiting his wife and bringing a pair of shoes for her birthday because bad weather had seemed to rule out an invasion. By the time he rushed back to the front, the Allies had established a foothold. As June turned to July, the Allied grip tightened. German counterattacks could not break the lodgment. Inside, Rommel grew a grim calculation. The war, at least in the West, was slipping away. He began to tell Berlin the war was unwinnable. His reports grew frank. The Allies had overwhelming air, men, tanks, and industry. The most Germany could hope for, he argued, was a political solution, a negotiated end in the West to avoid total destruction. By 1944, Rommel was disenchanted with Hitler's leadership. He had admired the early restoration of German pride and economy, but his frontline experience showed him something else. Orders divorced from reality, demands to hold ground at all costs, and a refusal to face the facts of Allied superiority. There is debate among historians about how much Rommel knew of the inner circles plotting to remove Hitler. He was not one of the bomb plotters, but he wanted Hitler out of the conduct of the war. He urged an armistice in the West. Some conspirators saw Rommel's popularity as essential for a post-Hitler settlement. Others feared he was too loyal or too cautious to endorse assassination. Rommel wanted the war to end. He did not want a civil war inside the army. On July 17, 1944, Rommel's staff car was strafed by Allied aircraft in Normandy. The crash left him with severe head injuries, fractures, concussion, and lingering neurological symptoms. He was evacuated to his home in Herrlingen to recover. Just 3 days later, on July 20th, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg placed a bomb in Hitler's headquarters at the Wolf's Lair. The bomb exploded. Hitler survived. In the frenzy that followed, the Gestapo dragged a net across Germany for suspects, sympathizers, and anyone who might legitimize the coup. Rommel's name surfaced again and again, sometimes by rumor, sometimes by tortured testimony, sometimes by the frightened calculations of men seeking to save themselves. He had urged a negotiated peace. He had criticized Hitler. He was the most famous general in Germany. That alone made him dangerous to the regime. Through August and September, investigators pried into Rommel's staff, seized documents, and pressured officers who had associated with him. Field Marshal von Kluge, who had also been suspected, committed suicide. Several officers close to Rommel were arrested or executed. The regime's logic was simple. The people admire Rommel. Therefore, Rommel must either serve the narrative or be erased from it. The regime needed Rommel's silence as much as it needed his guilt. By early October, Hitler was presented with a dossier alleging that Rommel supported the conspirators, or at least their goals. Whether Hitler truly believed it or simply found it convenient no longer mattered. A trial at the People's Court under Roland Freisler would be a public spectacle, screaming judges, predetermined verdicts. It would drag Rommel's name through the mud and, critically, it would implicate his family. On October 14, 1944, two generals, Wilhelm Burgdorf and Ernst Maysel, drove to Herrlingen. They arrived around noon. Rommel, still recovering, greeted them in his simple home. The conversation, at first formal, turned lethal. Burgdorf explained the choice. Berlin considered Rommel complicit in treason. If he demanded a public trial, the People's Court would convict him and likely execute him with piano wire, posting the film as a warning. His family and staff could face arrest, his son could be targeted, his aides could be killed. Or he could choose mercy. If Rommel took his own life immediately, the regime would spare his family. He would be given a state funeral with honors. The public explanation would be that his Normandy wounds had worsened, and he died of them. He would be remembered as a hero on the regime's terms. Rommel asked for a few minutes. He spoke to his wife, Lucy, and his teenage son, Manfred. He told them there was no third way. If he lived to face a trial, all of them would suffer. He put on his coat, took his field marshal's baton, and walked to the waiting car. They drove a short distance. Rommel sat in the back with Bergdorf. A small glass ampule was produced, polished, unmarked, and fatal. Rommel cracked it between his teeth. Within minutes, the poison stopped his breathing. He was 52 years old. It was not a free choice. It was a coerced exit designed to preserve the regime's narrative and protect his family. 4 days later, October 18th, the regime staged a grand funeral in Ulm Cathedral. Radio announcements mourned a national hero who, they said, had succumbed to war wounds. Wreaths and uniforms lined the nave. Hitler sent condolences. The deception held, at least in public, because terror held. Those who knew the truth knew also the price of speaking it. Only after the war did Rommel's family and former comrades explain the ultimatum. The veil lifted in stages as Allied investigations and post-war memoirs revealed the pressure campaign and the falsified cause of death. So why did Rommel choose cyanide? Because the dictatorship left him no path that did not smash his family. Because a public trial would become a weapon to humiliate the army and terrorize the dissenters. Because his name, once a shield for the regime's propaganda, had become a threat to it. He did not choose death over life in a vacuum. He chose between two instruments of execution and selected the one that, in his mind, protected the people he loved. And what of his politics? Rommel was no architect of the Nazi state. He did not share its racial ideology in his recorded conduct, and in North Africa he generally enforced a stricter discipline that limited abuse, though he still served a criminal regime. He was a career soldier who adapted to the opportunities of the 1930s, basked in fame, and later found himself confronting the consequences of that service when conscience and reality split from his oath. He favored ending the war in the West and removing Hitler from command. He did not sign onto a plan to murder him. That distinction, important to him, mattered little to a regime that saw any limit on Hitler as treason. After 1945, Rommel's legend was remade in the West as a clean general, a gifted opponent who fought skillfully and chivalrously. This post-war image simplified a complicated man and a darker context. He was a brilliant commander who served a criminal dictatorship. He saw the war's futility in 1944 and tried to steer toward negotiation. He was not an anti-Nazi activist in the modern sense. He was a professional soldier whose sense of duty eventually collided with reality. His coerced suicide became proof, to many Germans after the war, that not even the brightest could escape the regime's grip without paying a price. On that October afternoon, the choice presented to Rommel was not justice, it was theater. Choose the rope and the stage, or choose the vial and the lie. He chose the vial to close the curtain on the regime's terms and to spare his family from the next act. Why did Rommel choose the cyanide? Because a dictatorship turned a soldier's honor into a trap, and he used the only key it offered to free those he loved.